This might be one of the most important videos I've ever made. Because if we don't talk about this right now, I mean, really face it, this won't just be someone else's reality. This will be the fate of every Canadian who reaches their senior years. If your pension doesn't cover rent, food, or prescriptions, and the government's too broke or too busy to help, then what are you supposed to do? Sit on a lawn chair beside a tent and hope your kids start a GoFundMe page? This isn't just a housing crisis. This is a dignity crisis. These seniors, they paid their taxes. They followed the rules. They built this country, and some fought for our country. They fought for our freedoms that we have.
We're living.
In this tent lives 77-year-old Judy Howe with her 80-year-old partner George, a situation she never imagined to be in. She says they had an apartment in Halifax before the building was sold and to be torn down. After that, they went to Ontario to be with George's dying mother, but they couldn't afford to stay there and chose to return to Halifax.
It's not home. I go to bed crying at night. At night I go to bed crying and I pray to God, asking Him to get me out of here. I need to be out of here.
And now some of them are sleeping in tents, alone, hungry, and forgotten. Meanwhile, newcomers to Canada are being placed in hotels, giving housing allowances, and offered job placement services within weeks. And let me be clear, this isn't about hate, it's about priorities. It's about accountability. Because if we don't start talking about this loudly, directly, and unapologetically, then one day we'll look around and realize we're next.
Housing advocates say in early October, residents were told all services would soon be cut. In the ensuing weeks, they claimed the home engaged in an aggressive campaign to push people out. 81-year-old former resident Pierrette Cyr says pressure tactics included letting people go hungry.
They didn't give you meals. They don't do nothing for your security.
They had constant door knocking, constant pushing. It was not good for them.
Manoir, Louisiane has also had multiple complaints for bedbug infestations. Activists tried to get in to tell seniors they had rights, but claim they were repeatedly kicked out by police.
It's not a prison here. People have the right to receive visits.
The last resident left this week. It's now totally empty. While some found housing in neighboring areas, La Palme claims others were brought to a homeless shelter.
Let me ask you something. Does that sound like dignity to you? Pierrette is 81 years old. She's not asking for luxury. She's asking for meals, security, basic respect. And instead of receiving support, she gets told to pack up and get out. The place she trusted, the place her family probably thought was safe, tossed her aside. And this isn't just a story about mismanagement. This is what happens when profits come before people. And when no one's watching, this is the cost of silence. And if this can happen in Quebec, the province that's loudest about protecting its seniors, imagine what's happening in the shadows across the rest of Canada. They didn't give you meals. They don't do nothing for security. These aren't rare exceptions. These are the faces of national crisis. And what's worse, many of these seniors don't even show up on the data because they're probably couch surfing, living in their vehicles, or staying quiet out of shame. Their suffering is silent, systematic, and definitely ignored. So let's talk about balance for a second. We hear that word a lot, don't we? Balance the budget, balance immigration, balance foreign aid. But where's the balance when our seniors are sleeping in tents and billions are going to fund programs in other countries, subsidize new arrivals, or get swallowed up by bureaucracy? This isn't about turning Canadians against each other. Let's get that straight. It's about asking, why is the generation that built this country now footing the bill for everyone else and getting nothing in return? We cap daycare at $10 a day. We cap student loan repayments. Why don't we have a national senior housing cap? Imagine if the government guaranteed that no senior in Canada would pay more than 30% of their income on housing and covered the difference. Call it what you want, dignity, legacy, repayment, but it's time we treat seniors with the same urgency and respect we give every other social group. And you guys know which ones I'm talking about. Because here's the hard truth. Groceries aren't going back down. Rent isn't getting cheaper. And those pensions, they're not keeping up. If we can't afford 1.2 billion for immigration processing and 3 billion in international climate transfers, you're telling me we can't afford to keep an 81-year-old off the street? This isn't generosity. This is survival. And we owe it to the people who got us here. Let's break that down by the numbers, because this isn't about mismanagement. It's about math. CPP's average is about $758 a month. OAS is about $713 a month. And GIS, if you're eligible, is $947 a year. So that's around $1,500 a month for the average senior. But average rent in Toronto is $2,260, and Vancouver is $2,400, Halifax $1,800, Ottawa $1,950 a month. Even Windsor is nearly $1,700. And that's not including groceries, because they're still climbing year over year. Food inflation is hovering around 4% nationally as of 2025. But here's the real kicker. Since 2020, grocery prices are up over 20% cumulatively. So even if inflation is slowing, most seniors are still paying a fifth more for the same basket of food than they were just a few years ago, with income that hasn't moved. Hydro is up on average 35%. Prescriptions, on average, a senior will average about $328 a month out of pocket. And if they own a home, they still got to pay their property tax and their mobility aids and their dental and their vision. All of that's not covered. And seniors are reverse mortgaging their homes now. They're taking out HELOCs in their 70s and using credit cards for food. They're literally eating through their equity. And the inheritance they hope to pass down is more likely gone. Now, I already know what's coming. Claudia, are you saying we shouldn't help immigrants? I'm not saying that. Absolutely not. My parents were immigrants. They came from Italy. They were proud and determined, like most Canadians. We all come from somewhere else. So no, this isn't about blame. This is about balance, because right now we live in a country where refugees receive up to $13,500 in the first year with support. Housing subsidies, transit passes, ESL, legal aid, child benefits, and job placements are bundled with care. Yet a senior who worked here for 45 years can't get rent relief because they're already receiving GIS. This isn't about taking from one group. It's about not abandoning another. It's about taking care of our own backyard, just as fiercely as we welcome others through the front door. We have to help both. But right now, only one group is being protected from the cold. Now let's look at the scope of the crisis. In 2023, over 235,000 Canadians experienced homelessness. Toronto's shelter demand is up 60% since 2021. Vancouver's unhoused senior population is now 22% of all shelter users. And in Ontario, 3,500 plus seniors are now on housing waitlists. The wait times are 8 to 12 years. This is ridiculous. 1 in 5 seniors in Atlantic Canada lives below the poverty line. And British Columbia's Office of the Seniors Advocate reported 50% of low-income seniors are now one rent increase away from eviction. The system is designed to fail them. And that 10% OAS bump, it sounds generous until you realize it's just $68 a month. What does that give you? Inflation has eaten it 4 times that. The Canada Housing Benefit, many provinces don't allow you to receive it if you're already collecting GIS, which absolutely makes no sense. Programs don't coordinate. Seniors are passed from call center to call center. And when they finally qualify, they're told the funding ran out this quarter. Try again in April. Meanwhile, their rent is due on the 1st. In 2025, Quebec pledged $318 million over 5 years for senior care. But advocacy groups like FADOQ slammed the budget. This is a slap in the face to seniors living in crisis. If Quebec, the most vocal province on elderly rights, can't get it right, what does that say for the rest of Canada? This crisis didn't begin overnight. It's the result of 40 years of slowly chipping away at senior dignity. In the 1980s, seniors could afford to retire on a combination of CPP, a modest workplace pension, and affordable rent. But since then, rent control laws have weakened or vanished in multiple provinces. This crisis didn't. Affordable housing construction peaked in the 1990s and then plummeted. Interest rates cratered, making home equity feel infinite, while long-term affordability vanished. GIS and OAS increases failed to keep pace with real inflation, especially housing and healthcare costs. In short, we told seniors to plan, to save, and to own homes, but we changed the rules halfway through the game. And the generation that followed, Gen X and millennials, now carry massive mortgage burdens and aging parents at the same time. There are many real stories from across Canada. Gladys, 82, Regina. SK Gladys had to leave her rental after her building was sold to a developer. Her fixed income couldn't even cover market rent. She now lives in her niece's basement and is afraid to ask for help. Then there's Tom, 68, Charlottetown, PEI. Tom's wife passed away 2 years ago. His income dropped, but his rent didn't. He now sleeps in his car near Confederation Center and uses the library bathroom to wash up. Brenda, 74, Calgary, Alberta, worked 32 years as a nurse. When her condo board issued a surprise levy, she had to cash in the last of her savings. She fears one more financial hit will make her homeless. These are not failures of budgeting. These are the failures of policy, compassion, and priority. So what does this mean for the next generation? Well, if you're Gen X, a millennial, or a Gen Z, and you think this doesn't affect you, you better think again. You are the next in line for delayed retirement, zero defined pensions, higher healthcare costs, parents who may need housing and caregiving, a rental market that never softens. We're watching the last generation that owned homes outright lose them to debt, decay, or desperation. And if that's not happening to them, what's coming for us? This is no longer about those poor seniors. This is about all of us. What we can still do is talk about this publicly, normalize the reality of aging and poverty, donate to local senior housing charities, volunteer with food programs and advocacy groups, ask politicians hard questions, not just during elections, every quarter. And when you hear someone say they could have planned better, you say they've planned for a country that used to care. It's time we rebuild that. If you made it this far, thank you so very much. I made this video not to point fingers. It's not. I'm not causing division or anything, but I need to point forward, because if we don't fix this now, we won't just lose homes. We'll lose our honor, the honor that they stood up for us. Now we stand up for them. If this moved you, don't scroll past. Share this video, make it go viral, email your MP, comment your story or what you've witnessed, because silence isn't compassion, it's complacency. Thanks for watching.